Hey, what's up everyone? Dragon back again, here to tell you that you should be reading Dinotopia Lost. So Dinotopia Lost is a 1996 novel written by Alan Dean Foster and is kind of the first, I don't know if you want to call it spin-off story novel in the Dinotopia series. In essence, it's not written by James Gurney and doesn't have any illustrations by James Gurney, although he does do the original covers for it. And it is a full-length novel as opposed to kind of like an illustrative novel. And basically, the story focuses around like basically some of the characters we already come across in the story we know. Essentially, a pirate ship is shipwrecked on Dinotopia on the island, and kind of they essentially discover this lost world, this utopian civilizations where humans and dinosaurs along with other prehistoric creatures will all live in harmony. And surprise, surprise, pirates being pirates, don't necessarily embrace this, everyone sit around and give each other a big hug kind of world, if you will. And right away proceed to start causing damage. They're kind of wandering the wilds of this world, almost trying to pillage this world. And essentially it plays out much the way you would expect. So for that reason alone, it's not like a super in-depth story, but what it does do successfully is really kind of illustrate essentially this utopian civilization, this utopian world, and basically our world. Like, when you look at a world like Dinotopia and you see kind of how it functions as a society, politically speaking, and you ask yourself, like, how much different is it really for us? How difficult would it really be for our culture to kind of either A, assimilate into one like that, or B, kind of evolve into one like that? And with this, basically, the pirates, so right away you vilify them, you deem them as the enemy. But you start to realize as you kind of read through this novel, the story is that the pirates essentially represent us, that we are probably more similar to the pirates than we are, the characters in Dinotopia. Even though we, as the reader, would like to imagine ourselves as a Dinotopian. We would like to see ourselves as, as affiliated more with people like that, because people in Dinotopia represent an ideal. They are what we strive to be, whereas the pirates, unfortunately, are effectively what we are, more as a society. I'm not saying that all of you are a bunch of cutthroat, bloodthirsty assholes who would want to, rape and pillage and so on and so forth, but as a society, as human society as a whole exists today, and really just throughout human history, the pirates kind of represent the worst of it. Like, if we had to sum up human society since its inception, something like a cutthroat pirate would be, an accurate representation of us, because we would have to kind of round it up, or round it off to like the worst common denominator, because unfortunately throughout human history we have done more terrible things than good, unfortunately. And if you look at the humans in Dinotopia, they almost, in a weird way, especially in this story, when juxtaposed to the pirates, almost feel like a different race altogether. It almost feels more like a mythical, magical world where these are more humanoid creatures, but not really human. They are human, but they feel almost otherworldly now, because their reactions to things, their perceptions of the things, the way they kind of view the world and what is important to them versus what is not important to them, is in a lot of ways so vastly different than what is status quo in the real world, that they almost feel unrelatable, but in a good way, because again, they have become what we should all strive to be. And you really kind of find yourself looking at yourself when you read this story, because you realize that those who you are supposed to root against, the pirates, are essentially you, the reader. Regardless of whether you would do that, you represent a larger whole. You represent the whole these pirates do. Whereas the Dinotopians represent something that unfortunately does not exist in our world. And that's not even including the dinosaurs. That just is including the type of civilization and why the civilization has not come about in our world. Like, why can't it exist? Because Dinotopians are virtuistic to a point that, realistically speaking, human beings can't be. They are an ideal. They are, they are essentially kind of perfection personified in terms of kind of society. We can't actually be like Dinotopians because we are victim and prone to too much of our own nature, but it is the nature of Dinotopians that differs them from the rest of us, these pirates who represent our world. Now, I know throughout the Dinotopia books you meet people who are less than great, who don't necessarily exhibit kind of Dinotopian behavior, but as a whole, the society functions the way it does because those individuals are very much in the minority. They represent a very small facet of the culture. They are the 1%, in this world, except the 1% is this tiny little negative thing that, is essentially kind of a grain of sand in this world. Sure, it's there, but it's not large enough to hold any kind of sway in this world, nor is it going to disrupt the foundation of what makes this utopian society a utopian society. So the pirates themselves don't, run the risk of, usurping the society, but they are now kind of a sliver kind of like in your hand. They are a thorn in your side. They represent something that is inherently negative, that is essentially polluting this world by their existence in it now, and that is kind of essentially why they need to be dealt with, which again I won't spoil for you because I definitely want you to read the book, but essentially that's kind of what the crux of this story is about, and that's what's kind of my takeaway from it. It is, again, we get so caught up in the magic of Dinotopia reading James Gurney's stories, and they are very magical and they are very wondrous and they just really pull you into this world. But when you read this story, it is kind of a reminder that this world exists the way it does because it is removed from the outside world. It isn't a land apart from time. And for this world to continue the way it does, it must remain as such. So those who enter Dinotopia really shouldn't leave Dinotopia, and the people who enter Dinotopia really need to be the kind of people who can embrace Dinotopia, and the ones who don't need to be dealt with. So Dinotopia Lost, that's kind of really what this whole story comes down to. It's a reflection of ourselves as how we are as a society, not at an individual level. Again, I'm not saying you yourself would, identify with these. I mean, maybe you would, I don't know, and then you might have a very different takeaway from the story. But I'm not saying that you yourselves would, walk away from this story, feeling like, wow, I guess I would do that, because more than likely you wouldn't. But you have to understand that we are a part of a global society that, unfortunately, if came in contact with this world, this land apart from time, on a grand scale, we would in fact undo this world, because it is the nature of kind of the human condition as it stands now to kind of destroy what we touch as opposed to preserve. Because for every person who's out there right now trying to preserve something natural in the world, there seems to be more people trying to destroy it for their own gain, for their own profit, and unfortunately there seems to be no shortage of that in this day and age. But yeah, so for that reason alone, maybe a story like this is actually more relevant now than ever, because it takes a very kind of fun, adventurous, entertaining story, which pulls you in as a reader, as a piece of entertainment, and while you're there, forces you to kind of take a hard look at yourself and the world at large and realize that, wow, you strip away the dinosaurs and the kind of the fantastical imagery, and you realize, what's the difference in this book than what's happening today? And if it bothers you to read what it is you're reading, if you look at this like, oh, this is terrible, this sucks, and then you realize it's happening in the real world, it might kind of, spur action on your part, make you realize that, Dinotopia Lost, or a story like this, is very much a metaphor for life, and is a kind of a call to action, like say, hey, you know what, if you don't like this, then do something about it. And that's kind of what I feel the story is about. It is a call to action. It is illustrating something that is negative, that is threatening something that we would inherently love, but it's also telling us that we have the power to stop it. The worst thing we can do is to just stand idly by or wait for somebody else to come in and do something about it. Well, if everyone thinks that way, nobody's going to come in and do anything about it. So it's up to us to take matters in their own hands and take a stand, and much like the characters in the story do. So, Dinotopia Lost, the first spin-off or expansion, if you will, in the Dinotopia franchise. Have you read it? If so, what did you think? If not, I'll leave some links in the description section below where you can go pick it up, come back, give me some of your thoughts. How do you feel about the idea of Dinotopia being more than just the illustrated books by James Gurney, but branching out into other mediums? Or in addition to this one, there is another novel written by Alan Dean Foster called The Hand of Dinotopia, which yes, we will talk about on the show. And there's also a series of kind of small light novels, if you will, that have kind of just smaller stories, but again, branch out the Dinotopia universe. And there are some, mini-series and TV series, but in terms of what is canon within the book universe of all these other kinds of books. So how do you feel about it? Do you think Dinotopia should be strictly the illustrated novels by James Gurney, or do you like this idea of having those, which yes, I hope he does another one, but at the same time, expanding this world that he has created through other authors and through maybe other mediums as well? Regardless, come back, give me some of your thoughts, let me know. I'd love to know what you guys think. And as always, we'll catch you on the next one. Peace!